My name is Craig, 26 years old, a software engineer fresh out of college who managed to save $4,900 after a year of hard work. I always trusted my family completely, especially my mom who raised me with unconditional love. When her text message popped up asking to borrow my card for a bill payment, I didn't think twice. But that strange feeling in my stomach when I saw unfamiliar transaction alerts wasn't just hunger. It was my future vanishing in real time. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button, because what happened next changed how I'll trust family forever. I should probably tell you more about my family before diving into this mess. My mom, Sarah, is 48 years old and used to be the backbone of our household. When I was growing up, she managed our family finances with precision, keeping track of every dollar in a little notebook she carried in her purse. But over the past few years, something changed. I started noticing shopping bags piling up in her closet, tags still attached to clothes she never wore. There were hushed arguments between my parents about credit card statements, and Mom seemed increasingly anxious whenever the mail arrived. My dad, Richard, 50 years old, built his marketing consultancy from scratch and achieved considerable success. He works long hours, travels frequently for business, and maintains a detached, almost clinical approach to family matters. When he is home, he is often locked away in his home office, emerging only for meals or to deliver brief, cutting comments about household expenses. The emotional temperature drops 10 degrees whenever he enters a room. Then there is my younger sister, Lisa, 22, currently finishing her degree in communications at State University. She is smart and ambitious but constantly short on cash, despite the part-time job she maintains at the campus bookstore. Mom always seems to find extra money for Lisa's textbooks or apartment expenses, even when things are tight. The tension between my parents around finances has been building for years. Dad earns good money but holds the purse strings tight, requiring justification for every expense. Mom manages the day-to-day household budget, but seems perpetually stressed about making ends meet. Their arguments always circle back to the same topics: unnecessary purchases, hidden receipts, and dwindling savings. My $4,900 represented a year of careful budgeting and overtime work. After graduating with my computer science degree, I landed an entry-level position at a local tech company. The salary was decent but not spectacular, especially with student loans taking a chunk each month. I moved back home temporarily to save on rent, planning to build up enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on my own place. I had my eye on a used Toyota Camry with 62,000 miles on it, priced at $4,000. The remaining $900 would help furnish my new apartment once I found an affordable place. Every morning, I dragged myself onto a crowded bus for the 45-minute commute to work, dreaming about the freedom my own car would bring. To accumulate that money faster, I took on freelance coding projects on weekends and volunteered for extra shifts monitoring the company servers. While friends went out for drinks or concerts, I stayed home coding or picking up extra hours. This was not just money, it was my independence, my future, tangible proof that I was finally becoming a real adult after years of being a broke student. The history of lending money in our family was complicated. Mom had occasionally asked to borrow $20 or $50 when her account was running low before payday. She always repaid these small amounts promptly, sometimes with a little extra as thanks. Dad never asked to borrow money. His pride would not allow it, but he was generous with birthday checks and had helped with my laptop purchase for college. This time felt different. Mom's request to use my card for what she described as an urgent utility bill came with promises to transfer the money back within 24 hours. The amount she mentioned, $300, was not small, but it was not my entire savings either. I felt that familiar mix of concern and obligation, wanting to help but sensing something was not quite right. Still, this was my mother, the woman who had nursed me through childhood illnesses and celebrated every small achievement. How could I say no? I remember looking at my bank app that evening, watching the balance that represented countless overtime hours and sacrificed weekends. I told myself it was just a temporary loan, that the money would be back in my account before I even missed it. That small voice of doubt in the back of my mind was easy to ignore when weighed against the lifetime of trust my mother had earned. Of course you can use my card, I texted back. Just let me know when you are done, so I can keep track of things. Her response came quickly, filled with gratitude and reassurances. You are the best son ever. Just this one bill, I promise. Money will be back in your account first thing tomorrow. Looking back, there were subtle warning signs I missed. The slight delay before she responded to my questions about which utility needed paying. The uncharacteristic typos in her messages, as if she was typing in a hurry or under stress. The fact that she asked for my card information rather than having me make the payment directly to the utility company. Small details that seemed insignificant at the time, but in retrospect, were flashing warning signs. I provided my card information over the phone, carefully reading out the 16-digit number, the expiration date, and the 3-digit security code. Mom repeated each set of numbers back to confirm, her voice carrying that familiar warm tone that had always meant safety and honesty throughout my childhood. We ended the call with her promising again to return the money promptly, and me feeling good about being able to help my family in a time of need. That feeling of warmth and familial duty would last exactly 97 minutes before the first unexpected transaction alert chimed on my phone. It was Tuesday evening when my phone chimed with Mom's text message. I was wrapping up work, finishing some code before heading home. Craig, honey, I hate to ask, but our electricity bill is past due and my card is being declined. Could I possibly use yours just for this payment? I will transfer the money back tomorrow morning, promise. It is about $300. I hesitated briefly before responding. Sure, Mom. Just use it for the bill, though, okay? I am saving for the car. Of course. Thank you so much. You are my lifesaver. I will pay you back first thing tomorrow. I put my phone away and continued working, feeling good about helping out. That warm feeling lasted exactly 47 minutes. At 6:23 p.m., my phone started buzzing with transaction alerts. The first was indeed from the utility company, $312. That seemed reasonable. But 6 minutes later, another notification, $200 at a gas station. That seemed odd. Our local gas station never required that much for a fill-up, even for Dad's SUV. By 6:45, 3 more transactions had appeared. $150 at a convenience store, $400 at an ATM withdrawal, and another $300 at a different ATM. I tried calling Mom immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. Mom, I am seeing some strange transactions. Please call me back as soon as possible. 10 minutes later, I received a text. Sorry, honey. In a meeting with your dad's business partner for dinner. Cannot talk now. Everything is fine. Just paying some overdue bills. We'll explain later. Something felt deeply wrong. Mom did not usually have dinner meetings with Dad's business contacts, and what bills required cash withdrawals from ATMs. I called my sister Lisa to see if she knew where Mom might be. Hey Craig, what is up? Lisa sounded distracted. Do you know where Mom is right now? She said she is in a business dinner, but I am seeing some weird charges on my card. A long pause followed. I am not sure I should say anything. Lisa, please. My money is disappearing as we speak. She sighed heavily. I drove Mom to the Silver Eagle Casino earlier today. She said she just needed to talk to someone who works there about a billing issue. But she had that look, you know? My stomach dropped. The Silver Eagle was a casino about 30 miles outside the city. I had heard Mom mention it before, always casually, saying friends had recommended the buffet or the weekend entertainment, but I had never known her to go there. How long has Mom been going to casinos? I asked, my voice tight. I do not know exactly. A few months? Maybe longer. She made me promise not to tell Dad. I thanked Lisa and hung up, then immediately checked my bank account. The transactions had continued while we were talking. Nearly $2,000 had been withdrawn or charged in less than an hour. Almost half of my savings was already gone. I called Mom again, and again, and again. All went to voicemail. I texted multiple times with increasing urgency. No response. Panic rising, I grabbed my keys and headed to my car. The drive to my parents' house normally took 20 minutes, but I made it in 15, breaking speed limits the whole way. I needed answers, and I needed them now, before the rest of my money vanished into the casino's coffers. As I drove, more transaction notifications kept coming through. Another ATM withdrawal, a purchase at the casino gift shop, a charge from the casino restaurant. Each one felt like a physical blow, a betrayal that grew more profound with every dollar that disappeared. I tried to make sense of what was happening. Was Mom under some kind of duress? Had someone forced her to take my money? The alternative that she was willingly draining my account to gamble seemed impossible to reconcile with the mother I thought I knew. The suburban landscape flew by as I pressed the gas pedal harder, watching the speedometer climb. Traffic lights seemed to stretch into eternity as I waited for them to change, drumming my fingers on the steering wheel, checking my phone compulsively for any response from Mom. Nothing. By the time I turned onto my parents' street, nearly 2/3 of my savings had vanished. The money that represented countless sacrificed weekends, extra shifts, and careful budgeting was evaporating in real time, being fed into slot machines or scattered across poker tables by the woman who had taught me the value of saving in the first place. I could see lights on in the house as I pulled into the driveway. Mom's car was there, which meant she had somehow returned from the casino. Had Lisa picked her up again? Or had she taken a taxi, spending even more of my money on the fare? My hand shook slightly as I turned off the ignition. Whatever awaited me inside, I knew our relationship would never be quite the same again. The trust that I had taken for granted my entire life had been fractured, and I was about to discover just how deep the cracks went. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come, and stepped out of the car. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 7:32 p.m., noticing immediately that Mom's car was there. The living room lights were on, and as I approached the front door, I could hear raised voices inside. I used my key to enter without knocking. The scene that greeted me felt like walking onto a stage mid-performance. Mom sat on the living room couch, her face blotchy and eyes red-rimmed. Her normally perfect hair was disheveled, and she clutched a crumpled tissue in one hand. Dad stood by the fireplace, his posture rigid and face set in that cold mask I had seen so many times during family arguments. They both fell silent when I walked in. "Craig," Mom said, her voice wavering. "What are you doing here?" I held up my phone, displaying the bank app with all the transactions. Explaining this, I hope. Dad's eyes flickered to my phone, then back to Mom. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes did a flash of confirmation, like he had been proven right about something unpleasant. "Sarah," he said quietly. "Tell him." Mom's face crumpled further. She looked down at her hands, now twisting the tissue into shreds. "I am so sorry, Craig. I was going to pay it all back. I just needed a little cash to cover some debts, and then I thought maybe I could win enough to pay everything off, and you would never know." "Debts? What debts?" I asked, still standing in the doorway, not trusting myself to move closer. Dad laughed a short, humorless sound. "Your mother has quite the collection of IOUs, credit cards, personal loans, money borrowed from friends, and of course, her tab at the casino." Mom shot him a venomous look. "You were not supposed to tell anyone. You promised. That was before you started stealing from our son," Dad replied coldly. The word stealing hung in the air between us. Is that what this was? I had given her permission to use my card, but not like this, not for gambling. I sat down heavily in an armchair, my legs suddenly weak. How long has this been going on? The gambling? 3 years, give or take, Dad said before Mom could answer. The serious debt? About 18 months. This is not the first time she has taken money that was not hers. I looked at my phone again, refreshing the bank app. New transactions had appeared. My heart sank as I did the math. $4,900, I said quietly. It is all gone. Every cent I saved. Mom began sobbing in earnest now. I was so sure I could win it back. The dealer kept saying my luck was about to turn. Just one more hand, one more spin. And you knew about this? I turned to Dad, anger rising through my shock. You knew she had a gambling problem, and you did not warn me? Dad straightened his already perfect posture. I have dealt with this problem for years, Craig. I have paid off her debts, sent her to counseling she does not attend, Frozen credit cards she somehow manages to replace. At some point, everyone has to learn their own lessons. So this was what a teaching moment? My voice rose. Using my savings as some kind of object lesson? Consider it charity, Dad said with the slightest curl of his lip. Family charity. I could not believe what I was hearing. My mother had emptied my bank account for gambling, and my father had apparently stood by and allowed it to happen. The betrayal was so complete it left me breathless. Lisa appeared in the doorway, having apparently arrived during our confrontation. Her face was pale, eyes wide as she took in the scene. I did not know she was going to take your money, Craig, she said quickly. I swear, I just thought she was meeting someone. I nodded numbly, unable to find words for my sister who looked as lost as I felt. The family I thought I knew, the parents I had trusted implicitly, suddenly seemed like strangers. Worse than strangers, people who had knowingly harmed me. I will pay you back, Mom said between sobs. I promise I will. I just need a little time. With what money? Dad asked sharply. Your credit cards are maxed out. Your personal account is overdrawn. You have already borrowed from everyone who would lend to you. Mom had no answer for that. She just cried harder, shoulders shaking with the force of her sobs. And in that moment, surrounded by my family, yet feeling utterly alone, I realized that the money was not even the worst part of what I had lost today. It was the trust, simple, fundamental trust in the people who were supposed to love me most. The weight of this realization pressed down on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. I had always seen our family as imperfect but fundamentally solid. Now it seemed more like a carefully constructed facade, with rot and decay hidden just beneath the surface. Show me the transactions again, Dad said, holding out his hand for my phone. I passed it to him silently, watching as his eyes scanned the long list of withdrawals and purchases. His jaw tightened visibly with each swipe of his finger. The Silver Eagle Casino. Again. He turned to Mom, who seemed to shrink further into the couch. After everything we discussed, after all the promises you made, you went back there and took our son's money. I thought I could fix it, Mom whispered. Just one good win. That is all I needed. That is what you always say, Dad replied, his voice flat with exhaustion rather than anger now. Just one more game, one more chance, one more loan. When does it end, Sarah? Mom had no answer. She just stared at her hands, tears falling onto her twisted tissue. Lisa moved to sit beside Mom, putting an arm around her shoulders. I noticed how my sister positioned herself slightly angled, as if physically placing herself between our parents. How many times had she played this mediator role before? How many family crises had she weathered that I knew nothing about? We need to figure out how to fix this, Lisa said, glancing between all of us. Craig needs his money back, and Mom needs help. Dad handed my phone back to me with a heavy sigh. Your sister is right, at least about the second part. Your mother needs professional help, which she has repeatedly refused. As for your money, he trailed off, looking at Mom with a mixture of anger and resignation. I will get it back, Mom insisted, straightening slightly. I can borrow from my sister Judy, or maybe sell some jewelry. Your sister stopped taking your calls after the last unpaid loan, Dad reminded her. And the real jewelry was pawned months ago. Each revelation felt like another trapdoor opening beneath me. How much did not I know about what had been happening in my own family? How long had this deception been going on while I moved through the house, focused on my own goals and problems? Why did not anyone tell me? I asked, looking from Dad to Lisa. Either of you? If you knew this was going on, why keep it secret? Lisa looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Dad's gaze remained steady, but I could see the conflict there. Your mother begged us not to, he finally said. She was ashamed. And frankly, I thought I could handle it. I have been managing your mother's episodes for years now, paying off debts, making excuses to friends, monitoring accounts. I never imagined she would target your savings. The clinical way he described it, managing episodes, made it sound so cold and distant, as if Mom's addiction was simply an inconvenient behavioral quirk rather than a destructive force tearing through our family. Well, your management strategy has failed spectacularly, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. My entire savings is gone, and from the sound of it, Mom is deeper in her addiction than ever. Dad flinched slightly, the first crack in his composed facade. "You are right," he admitted. "I failed. I thought I could protect this family by containing the problem privately. I was wrong. Coming from my father, who never admitted fault, this was a startling concession, but it did nothing to bring back my money or repair the trust that had been shattered." "What happens now?" I asked, looking around at the broken circle of my family. None of them had an answer. "I want my money back," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "All of it, by the end of the week." Mom nodded frantically, still crying. "I will find a way, I promise." "How exactly do you plan to do that, Sarah?" Dad's voice cut through the room like ice. "You have exhausted every financial resource you had access to." "I could sell my jewelry," Mom offered weakly. Dad laughed again, that same cold sound. "The real pieces, or the costume jewelry? Because you pawned the real ones last year to cover your losses at the slot machines." I had not known about that. Grandma's pearls, Mom's engagement ring gone. The revelations kept coming, each one more painful than the last. "I want to know exactly how bad this is," I demanded, standing up. "No more secrets, no more lies. How much debt are we talking about?" Mom and Dad exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them that excluded me entirely. "Tell him," Dad finally said. "He deserves to know what he is dealing with." Mom looked at her hands, voice barely audible. "About $27,000, across different cards and loans." The number hit me like a physical blow. 27,000? How is that possible? "It adds up fast when you are paying 24% interest," Dad said grimly. "And when you keep digging the hole deeper instead of climbing out. If you knew it was this bad, why did not you do something?" I asked Dad, anger building again. "Why just stand by and watch?" "I have done plenty," Dad snapped, his composure finally cracking. "Paid off 60,000 in debts over the past 2 years, arranged for counseling appointments she never keeps, taken control of the household accounts she finds ways around. At some point, Craig, a person has to want to change." The argument escalated quickly from there. I accused Dad of enabling Mom's addiction by covering it up. Dad accused me of naivety, saying I had no idea what he had been dealing with. Mom alternated between tearful apologies and defensive justifications for her behavior. Lisa tried desperately to mediate, only to get caught in the crossfire. "I will go to Gamblers Anonymous," Mom promised, "starting tomorrow, and I will get a job to pay you back, Craig." "You have promised that before," Dad reminded her coldly. "You attended exactly 2 meetings before claiming they were not helpful." "This time is different," Mom insisted. "Because now you have stolen from your son instead of just your husband?" Dad's words were brutal, and Mom flinched as if he had slapped her. I took a deep breath, trying to think clearly through my anger and disappointment. I need a concrete plan, not promises. Either I get my money back, or I report the card as stolen. Mom gasped. "You would not." "It was stolen," I said flatly. "You took it for one purpose and used it for another, without my consent." "He is right, Mom," Lisa said quietly. "What you did was wrong." Mom turned to Lisa with a wounded expression. "Even you are against me now? After I helped with your tuition when your scholarship fell through?" Lisa went pale. "What are you talking about? Dad paid my tuition." Mom's hand flew to her mouth, too late to take back the words. Dad's expression darkened further. "What tuition payment, Sarah?" The truth spilled out in painful fragments. Mom had apparently withdrawn $8,000 from Lisa's college fund last semester, claiming to Lisa that Dad had arranged it, and telling Dad that the university had offered an additional grant. Neither had thought to verify the story with the other. "The money has gone too, is not it?" Lisa asked, her voice small. "My graduation fund?" Mom could not meet her eyes, which was answer enough. "Jesus Christ," Dad muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Is there any account you have not raided?" As the argument continued to spiral, I noticed Mom's phone light up on the coffee table. The notification caught my eye, an email preview from an account I did not recognize, containing the words, "payment reminder," and outstanding balance. "What is gamblinggal78@gmail.com? I asked suddenly, reading the address on the screen. Mom lunged for the phone, but I was faster. I snatched it up, holding it out of her reach. "Give that back. It is private," she shouted, panic replacing her tears. "Not anymore," I said, opening the Gmail app. "Not when you have taken my money." The email inbox that loaded was not Mom's usual account. This was something else entirely, hundreds of messages from online casinos, payment processors, and what looked like private lenders with questionable business practices. Some had subject lines promising easy wins. Others were clearly threats about overdue payments. "You have a secret email account for your gambling?" Dad asked, looking over my shoulder at the screen. The surprise in his voice suggested even he had not known how deep this went. Mom collapsed back onto the couch, all fight leaving her. "I needed a way to keep track of everything," she said dully. "The different accounts, the payment schedules." "The lies," I added, scrolling through message after message. "Do not forget the lies." The discovery of the secret Gmail account marked a turning point in the confrontation. There was no more denying the extent of the problem, no more minimizing it as a occasional lapse in judgment. This was a systematic deception, maintained over years, that had now engulfed the entire family. Dad took the phone from me, his face hardening as he scrolled through the emails. "This ends tonight," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "No more chances, Sarah. No more bailouts." Mom looked up at him, genuine fear in her eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means I am done," Dad replied. "Either you get serious help, or I am filing for separation." The ultimatum hung in the air, changing everything. For all their arguments and tension, I had never seriously considered that my parents' marriage might end. From the shocked expression on Lisa's face, neither had she. "Richard, please," Mom said, reaching for Dad's hand. He stepped back, avoiding her touch. "I will get help this time. Real help." "You have said that before," Dad replied. "Many times." "I mean it now," she insisted. "I will do whatever it takes. Please, just give me one more chance." Dad looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he glanced at me. "It is not just my decision anymore. You have hurt Craig now too. He gets a say in what happens next." All eyes turned to me. Suddenly I was cast in the role of judge, expected to deliver a verdict on my own mother's fate. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing. "I just want my money back," I said finally, "and I want to know this will never happen again." Mom nodded eagerly. "I will find a way to pay you back, and I will get help, I swear." But as I looked at her desperate expression, at Dad's skeptical one, at Lisa's tear-streaked face, I knew that simple promises were not going to be enough this time. The trust was too badly broken. We needed something more concrete, more binding than just words. "I need to think," I said, standing up. "I cannot make any decisions right now." I headed for the door, needing space, air, distance from this suffocating atmosphere of deception and recrimination. "Where are you going?" Lisa called after me. "Somewhere I can think clearly," I replied. "I will be back tomorrow." As I walked out into the cool evening air, I felt both incredibly alone and strangely liberated. For the first time, I was seeing my family without illusions, without the comfortable myths we had constructed about ourselves. The truth was ugly and painful, but at least it was real. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another transaction alert. I did not even bother to look. There was nothing left to take. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began methodically exploring all my options for recovering my money. None looked promising. I contacted my bank first, explaining the situation. The customer service representative was sympathetic but firm. Since I had given Mom permission to use my card, this was considered an authorized transaction. The fact that she had misused that permission was, legally speaking, a personal matter, not bank fraud. They could not reverse the charges. Next, I called the casino where most of the money had been spent. The manager I eventually reached after navigating a labyrinth of transfers and holds explained that they had no way of refunding gambling losses, regardless of the circumstances. "Once the chips are played, sir, that money belongs to the house or to the winners," he said with practiced regret. I turned to Mom's promise to borrow money from friends to repay me. That hope was quickly extinguished when she admitted, shamefaced, that she had already borrowed from everyone who might lend to her. Some had already cut contact after she failed to repay earlier loans. "What about your sister in Philadelphia?" I suggested desperately. "Aunt Judy always liked you best." Mom shook her head. "I borrowed $3,000 from her last Christmas, said it was for home repairs after that big storm. She has been asking for pictures of the new roof." As each potential solution collapsed, my focus returned to the secret Gmail account. While Mom had been on the phone trying unsuccessfully to negotiate a personal loan from her bank, I had spent more time looking through those emails. What I found painted an even more disturbing picture than I had initially realized. There were communications with at least 6 different online gambling sites, most based offshore to avoid U.S. gambling regulations. Mom had accounts with multiple payday loan companies charging astronomical interest rates. Most alarmingly, there were exchanges with individuals who appeared to be private lenders operating outside any legal framework. People with names like Cash King and Lucky Loaner who used veiled threats about collection methods when payments were late. By mid-afternoon, it was clear that the conventional routes to recovering my money were closed. Dad had flatly refused to help, saying this was between Mom and me. "She needs to face consequences," he insisted. "Otherwise, nothing will change." Lisa had offered me her last $300 from her part-time job, which I declined. It was not her responsibility to fix this, and she would need that money herself now that we knew her education fund had been depleted. As I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes from my futile calls and research, Mom entered with red-rimmed eyes and slumped shoulders. "I have tried everything," she said, dropping into the chair across from me. "No one will lend me anything. I do not know what to do." "You could sell your car," I suggested without much hope. "It is leased, and we are underwater on the payments," she admitted. "Dad's collection of vintage watches? He keeps them in a safe deposit box. I do not have access." Each revelation was another door closing, another path blocked. "I am so sorry, Craig," Mom said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "I know sorry does not help, but I really am. I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen," I replied. "And it is not the first time, is it? You have been doing this for years, taking money from everyone around you." Mom flinched but did not deny it. "When did it start?" I asked, suddenly needing to understand. "The gambling, I mean." She sighed deeply. "About 3 years ago. It was just bingo at first, with friends from church. Then slots at the casino, just $20 at a time, I swear. But then I won $500 one night, and the feeling was..." She closed her eyes, remembering. It was like nothing else. All my worries disappeared. I felt powerful, in control. "But you were not in control," I pointed out. "The opposite." "I know that now," she said quietly. "But by the time I realized I was in trouble, I already owed so much. I kept thinking one big win would fix everything." The conversation was interrupted when Dad entered the kitchen, his face grim. "I have been going through those emails more thoroughly," he said, addressing me rather than Mom. "It is worse than we thought. Your mother has been writing bad checks to cover some of these debts." Mom's face went pale. "Richard, please. No more secrets," Dad cut her off. "Bad checks are criminal fraud, Sarah. This is not just about family money anymore." I felt physically ill. Criminal charges? This was spiraling beyond anything I had imagined when I first saw those transaction alerts. Dad turned to face Mom directly, his expression harder than I had ever seen it. "I meant what I said last night. Either you get professional help, real help, not just promises, or I am contacting a divorce attorney tomorrow. And if Craig decides to file charges about the credit card, I will not stand in his way." Mom began crying again, but the tears seemed different this time, not manipulative or self-pitying, but the genuine response of someone finally confronting the magnitude of their actions. "I need help," she whispered. "I know I need help." It was the first completely honest thing she had said since this nightmare began. As Dad and Mom continued talking, their voices now lowered but intense, I slipped away to the guest room where I had spent the night. My mind was racing, processing everything I had learned in the past 24 hours. The money was almost certainly gone for good. My relationship with my parents was damaged in ways that might never fully heal. And yet, beneath the anger and betrayal, I felt something else emerging, a strange, calm clarity about what needed to happen next. I opened my laptop and began working methodically. First, I forwarded all the emails from Mom's secret account to myself, organizing them by type: gambling sites, lenders, payment processors. Then I created a document summarizing the total amounts owed, interest rates, and payment deadlines. I researched gambling addiction treatment programs in our area, compiling a list of options with their requirements and success rates. Finally, I drafted an email addressed to my parents and Lisa. I attached the evidence I had gathered, the financial summary, and the treatment program information. The message itself was brief but unmistakable in its resolve. I have compiled everything I have discovered about Mom's gambling addiction and financial deception. I am giving you until 9 a.m. tomorrow to agree to the following conditions. 1. Mom enrolls in a residential treatment program for gambling addiction within 72 hours. 2. Dad covers the cost of treatment and commits to attending family therapy sessions. 3. Both of you sign a formal agreement to repay my $4,900 within 6 months. If these conditions are not met, I will forward all evidence of financial fraud to the appropriate authorities and financial institutions. This is not a bluff. I love you both, but I will not enable this destruction any longer. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the nuclear option threatening legal consequences against my own mother. Once sent, there would be no taking it back. But as I thought about the years of deception, the casual way my future had been gambled away, and the enabling dynamics that had allowed the situation to reach this point, I knew it was the only leverage I had left. I pressed send, then set up an automatic email scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning that would forward all the evidence to the police department's fraud division, the state attorney general's consumer protection office, and the banks involved unless I canceled it before then. Then I packed my overnight bag, left the house without saying goodbye, and checked into a cheap motel. I turned my phone to silent, set my alarm for 8:30 a.m., and tried to sleep, knowing that when morning came, our family would never be the same again. The room was sparse and impersonal: a double bed with a worn comforter, a small desk with a lamp, a television bolted to the wall. It felt oddly appropriate for this moment of transition. I was adrift between what my family had been and what it would become, suspended in an anonymous space that belonged to no one. As I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, I wondered if I had gone too far. Was I really prepared to send my own mother to jail, to potentially destroy my parents' marriage and what remained of our family? The thought made me feel physically sick, but then I remembered the methodical way Mom had drained my account, transaction by transaction, the years of lies she had told to everyone who loved her, the way Dad had stood by, enabling her addiction while believing he was managing it. And I knew that the real destruction had already occurred. I was simply refusing to pretend otherwise any longer. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Lisa. "Whatever you decide, I support you. Love you, big brother." At least I was not entirely alone. With that small comfort, I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. I barely slept that night, drifting in and out of anxious dreams where I was always searching for something lost. When my alarm buzzed at 8:30, I felt gritty-eyed and hollow but resolved. I checked my phone, half expecting a flurry of calls and texts. There was nothing. No responses to my email, no missed calls, no frantic text messages. Had they not taken my ultimatum seriously? Or were they discussing it among themselves, weighing their options? Either way, the clock was ticking. In 30 minutes, the automated email would send, escalating this family crisis into a legal one. I showered quickly in the motel's lukewarm water, trying to clear my head. Was I doing the right thing? The thought of my mother facing criminal charges made my stomach clench. But then I remembered how easily she had lied to my face, how systematically she had drained my account dollar by dollar while promising to repay a debt she knew she could not cover. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. It was calculated deception from someone who should have protected me. At 8:55, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, phone in hand, watching the minutes tick by. Still no contact from my family. Had they called my bluff? Did they not believe I would actually follow through? The thought crystallized a determination in me that cut through the doubt and emotional turmoil. This was about more than money now. It was about breaking a destructive pattern that had been poisoning our family for years. At 8:59, my phone finally rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. "Hello?" I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "We are ready to talk," Dad said without preamble. "Your mother has agreed to treatment. We have found a facility that can take her this afternoon." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by suspicion. "And the repayment plan?" "I will cover it," Dad said. "The full amount, transferred to your account by the end of business today." "What made you decide?" I asked, still wary of this sudden capitulation. There was a pause before Dad responded. "Your mother saw what you sent. All the documentation, organized so clearly. I think it finally showed her just how deep this has gone." Another pause. "And I realized I've been part of the problem too. Enabling her, covering it up, thinking I could handle it privately." I checked the time. 9 exactly. Somewhere across town, the automated email would be triggering in seconds unless I logged in and canceled it. "I need more than words," I said firmly. "I need Mom on the phone, confirming she is going to treatment. And I need the money in my account, before I cancel what is about to happen." "What do you mean, cancel?" Dad asked sharply. "I set up an automated email with all the evidence. It sends at 9 a.m. to the police, the banks, and the Attorney General's office. I have about 30 seconds to stop it." "Jesus Christ, Craig," Dad breathed. "Hold on." I heard shuffling. Then Mom's voice came on the line, high-pitched and panicky. "Craig, please do not do this. I am going to treatment today, I swear. Your father has already called the facility. Please." In the background, I heard commotion-raised voices, what sounded like a door slamming. "What is happening there?" I demanded. "Your mother just checked her email," Dad explained, back on the line. "She saw the countdown timer on your message. She is not taking it well." I logged into my email account, fingers flying over the keyboard as I navigated to the scheduled email. It showed "Sending" in the status field. "The money, Dad. Now, or the email goes out." "I am making the transfer as we speak," he said, his tone urgent. "Just stop that email." I clicked cancel send repeatedly, watching the spinning circle as the system processed my request. After what felt like eternity, a confirmation appeared. Scheduled email canceled. I exhaled slowly, the tension of the moment leaving me lightheaded. It is done. The email is canceled. Over the phone, I heard Mom's voice rise in what sounded like a wail, then abrupt silence. "What just happened?" I asked. Dad's voice was strained. She opened the Gmail app on her phone to see if the email had gone out yet. "I think she just saw all the evidence you compiled, organized by date. She is upset." That was clearly an understatement. In the background, I could hear Mom crying out something incomprehensible, her voice rising to a shriek. Then came the sound of doors opening, voices calling out in concern. "Is that the neighbors?" I asked in disbelief. "Yes," Dad confirmed, sounding embarrassed. "Sharon and Bob from next door. Your mother is quite vocal right now." I closed my laptop and began gathering my things from the motel room. "I will be there in 20 minutes. Do not let her leave before I arrive." "She is not going anywhere," Dad assured me grimly. "Except to treatment this afternoon." When I arrived at my parents' house, the scene was surreal. Mom sat at the kitchen table, her face blotchy and swollen from crying, hands clutched around a mug of untouched tea. Dad stood by the counter, looking exhausted but somehow more present than I had seen him in years. Lisa sat across from Mom, her expression a mixture of concern and wariness. And surprisingly, our next-door neighbor Sharon was there too, her arm around Mom's shoulders. The neighbors heard the commotion. Lisa explained quietly as I set my bag down. Sharon came over to check if everything was okay. Mom ended up telling her everything. This was unprecedented. Our family had always maintained a polished facade to the outside world, never revealing the tensions that simmered beneath the surface. For Mom to confess her gambling addiction to a neighbor marked a seismic shift in how she was approaching her problems. "I cannot hide it anymore," Mom said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I have been so ashamed, making up stories, digging myself deeper with every lie. I am sorry, Craig. What I did to you was unforgivable. It is not about forgiveness right now, I said, sitting down across from her. It is about getting you help and making sure this never happens again. Dad slid his phone across the table to me. On the screen was a confirmation of a bank transfer, $4,900 to my account. It is done, he said simply. Sharon squeezed Mom's shoulder gently. I will drive you to the treatment center this afternoon, Sarah. My cousin went through the same program last year. It is tough, but it works if you commit to it. I glanced at Sharon with new appreciation. Her matter-of-fact support, free from the emotional baggage that weighed down our family's interactions, seemed to be exactly what Mom needed in this moment. The next few hours passed in a blur of practical arrangements. Mom packed a bag for her 30-day stay at the treatment facility. Dad contacted his office to arrange working remotely for the next week. Lisa and I sat at the kitchen table, drafting a formal repayment agreement that all four of us would sign. Why did you do it? I asked Dad when we had a moment alone. Set up the transfer immediately, I mean. You were so against helping yesterday. Dad looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Because you did something I should have done years ago. You refused to enable her. You set a boundary and were willing to enforce it, even at great personal cost. He shook his head slowly. I have been managing this situation instead of addressing it, protecting her and myself from consequences instead of facing the real problem. By 3 p.m., Mom was ready to leave for the treatment center. As Sharon waited in the driveway, Mom turned to me at the front door, her expression more clear-eyed than I had seen in days. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving up on me even when you had every right to. I did not know how to respond. Part of me was still angry, still hurt by her betrayal. Another part recognized the courage it took to face her addiction after years of denial. Just do the work, Mom, I finally said. That is all I ask. After the car pulled away, the house felt strangely empty. The three of us, Dad, Lisa, and I, moved around each other awkwardly, unused to this new reality where our family's darkest secret had been dragged into the light. What happens now? Lisa asked as we sat down to a takeout dinner none of us had much appetite for. Now, I said, we start rebuilding, but differently this time, with honesty. Dad nodded, looking older and more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. And with boundaries, he added. You were right about that, Craig. Sometimes love means being tough enough to say no. It was not a perfect resolution, far from it. There would be hard days ahead, relapses perhaps, trust to be rebuilt slowly over time. But as I checked my bank account one more time, seeing my savings restored, I felt something unexpected beneath the lingering hurt and anger. Hope. Not just for my car and apartment plans, which could now proceed as intended, but hope for my family, which had been forced to confront its demons in the harsh light of day, and had, surprisingly, not crumbled completely under the scrutiny. As I drove back to my apartment that evening, I felt both older and strangely lighter. The past 48 hours had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. I had discovered strength. I did not know I possessed the courage to stand up to the people I loved most when necessary, to demand truth even when it was painful. More importantly, I had learned that sometimes the most caring action is not the gentlest one. Sometimes real love requires difficult choices, hard boundaries, and the willingness to risk a relationship in order to save the person you care about. That was 6 months ago. A lot has changed since that explosive morning when Mom's scream brought the neighbors running. The treatment program was not a magic cure, but it was a solid beginning. Mom completed the 30-day residential program, then continued with outpatient therapy and daily Gamblers Anonymous meetings. There have been difficult moments, a relapse in month 3, when she placed online bets using a new email account, immediately followed by a tearful confession to her sponsor. The road to recovery is not linear, but she is traveling it with more honesty than before. Dad transformed too, in his own quieter way. He attended the family sessions at the treatment center, gradually opening up about his own role in enabling Mom's addiction. His need for control, his pride that prevented him from seeking outside help, his tendency to throw money at problems Rather than addressing their emotional roots, he is working on all of it with his own therapist now. The formal repayment agreement we signed that day has been honored. My account was restored immediately, but more importantly, Mom and Dad have stuck to the treatment plan. Dad installed financial monitoring software that sends alerts to both him and me if unusual spending patterns emerge. Mom voluntarily surrendered her credit cards and now operates with a prepaid debit card loaded weekly with a reasonable allowance. Lisa and I have become closer through this ordeal. We meet for coffee every Sunday morning, a tradition that started during Mom's treatment when we both needed someone to talk to. She has graduated now and found a job in marketing, living with roommates in an apartment downtown. Her education fund is being gradually replenished by our parents, though it will take time to recover fully. As for me, I did buy that used Toyota Camry. The 45-minute bus commute is now a 20-minute drive, giving me extra time each morning for a proper breakfast or a stop at the gym. I have moved out of my parents' house into a small but comfortable one-bedroom apartment closer to work. The independence feels good necessary, even for establishing the boundaries I now recognize as essential. The healing process has not been easy. There are still moments when I feel that flash of betrayal all over again, when Mom asks about my finances or when I receive a transaction alert from my bank. Trust, once broken, does not mend overnight, but it can mend gradually, with consistent effort and demonstrated change. Perhaps the most profound shift has been in how our family communicates. The culture of secrecy that allowed Mom's addiction to flourish has been replaced by sometimes uncomfortable honesty. We talk about money openly now, not just amounts, but the feelings and fears attached to it. We acknowledge problems when they arise instead of sweeping them under the rug. I have learned painful but valuable lessons through this experience. That love sometimes means setting firm boundaries, that helping is not always the same as enabling, that family loyalty should not require blind trust or self-sacrifice. Most importantly, I have learned that addressing a problem directly, however difficult or confrontational that might be, is ultimately kinder than allowing it to fester beneath the surface. My ultimatum, as harsh as it seemed in the moment, was actually the most caring thing I could have done for my mother and for our family as a whole. Mom said something in her third month of recovery that has stayed with me. We were sitting on her porch swing, talking about the past and the damage her addiction had caused. I was so afraid of being seen as a failure, she confessed quietly. I kept thinking I could fix everything myself, before anyone noticed how bad things had gotten. Each lie was just buying time until I could make it right. But the lies became the problem, I pointed out. She nodded. The secrets were like a poison. The more I tried to contain them, the sicker I got. She looked at me directly then. When you forced everything into the open, it was like lancing an infection. Painful, but necessary for healing to begin. That is the paradox I have come to understand. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to participate in someone's self-destruction. Sometimes saying no is more compassionate than saying yes. Sometimes the quiet, determined action is more powerful than all the shouting in the world. I still have my difficult days. Moments of anger when I remember how easily my trust was betrayed. Moments of doubt when I wonder if the changes will last. But those moments grow fewer as time passes and our new family patterns prove themselves sustainable. What about your families? Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? Did you find the courage to take a stand when it would have been easier to look away? Let me know in the comments, and do not forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the deepest healing, and your story might be the one that gives someone else the courage they need. Thank you for listening, and remember, trust should be treasured, boundaries should be respected, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply tell the truth. The path forward is not perfect. Mom still attends her meetings 3 times a week, Dad continues his individual therapy, and our family sessions happen twice a month. We are learning a new language of honesty, one awkward conversation at a time. There are still moments of tension, old patterns that try to reassert themselves, but we catch them faster now. Last week, Mom got a part-time job at a local bookstore. The pay is modest, but the routine and responsibility have been good for her. Dad has learned to step back, allowing her to manage her own recovery without his controlling oversight. Lisa is thriving in her new job, slowly rebuilding her savings with a financial literacy that comes from hard experience. As for me, I now keep my financial information private, not from mistrust, but as a healthy boundary. I visit my parents regularly but maintain the sanctuary of my own apartment. I have learned that love can be both close and separate, supportive and bounded. If there is one thing I hope you take from my story, it is this. True compassion sometimes requires difficult actions. The easy path of enabling and secret-keeping may seem kinder in the moment, but it only postpones the inevitable reckoning. Real love has the courage to face painful truths and to stand firm when necessary. Share this video if you know someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe for more stories about family challenges and how we overcome them together. And please, comment below with your own experiences. How did you find the strength to set boundaries when you needed to? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.